The first events of the movie start with Noel talking about a betrayal that happened to him a long time ago when the symbiotes betrayed him and locked him in the place he is in, and that the key to his freedom is called the Codex, and it is with one of the symbiotes and one of the worlds. And Noel asks his savage creatures to search the universe for the key, because once they find it, he will start wanting all the living planets, and he will take revenge on the symbiote. And Noel grants his creatures eternal life after that, and opens a time gap for them through which he comes out, and then the events transfer them to planet Earth to see Eddie while he is sitting, talking about aliens with a bar worker, because suddenly a time gap appears, and Eddie is pulled into it and transferred to the same place with another bar worker, but Venom controls Eddie's actions, because he wants to remember, and he acts strangely. Because then Eddie hears on the news that the police are looking for him to interrogate him after the death of Detective Patrick. And at that time, Eddie understands that he is accused of killing Detective Patrick and is currently being pursued. When Eddie walks in the street, he hears a cry for help and decides to go towards the source of the sound. When Eddie opens the place, he finds it a prison for a group of dogs. After that, a group of outlaws enter and ask him about the reason for his presence in this place. Eddie warns of a creature living inside it, and that if he comes out, he will cut off all their heads. The criminal mocks his words because Eddie orders them to release the dogs. At that moment, the criminal begins to wound Eddie with a dagger, so that Eddie kicks him with a very strong kick. After that, Eddie begins to transform into Venom, and begins to open the dog cages on them so that the dogs begin to attack them. After that, Venom begins to feed on their heads. Then a creature from the creatures that serve Noel appears, and then the general appears, and at that moment he begins to interrogate the bartender about Eddie. The bartender tells him that Eddie was talking to himself and doing strange things, so that the general orders his arrest. Then the events move to the 51st military base, which will be closed permanently, and Dr. Bane is present at the base during the closure order. Then she goes to Area 55, where the Abram Containment Project and the study of the symbiote are located. The doctor meets the general because she sent the research team to receive a sample of the Venus symbiote that they found in Mexico. Then Dr. Bane and the general respond to Teddy, who is carrying a type of symbiote, and they begin to ask him about the reason for the presence of the symbiote on planet Earth. Teddy tells them that they are here because planet Earth is a safe haven for them, and Teddy tells them that there are currently aliens searching for them, and that when they find it, they all die and the planet Earth is destroyed. So Dr. Bane smiles about the reason for the symbiote's escape, so he talks to her about the boy and what they slept doing. At that time, Eddie was hanging on a plane traveling to New York City, but he couldn't stand the air pressure or the cold weather, so he would transform into Venom. At that time, the Knoll creature could determine their location through the key that was in Venom's body, and the creature began to attack Venom, and Venom was able to get rid of him through the plane's engines. And Eddie couldn't stand the force of the air, but before he fell to the ground, Venom was able to save him. At that time, a family appeared to us walking on the road, and they were heading to Area 51 because the father is obsessed with aliens and is curious to see one of them. So, while they were walking, parts of the creature's body would fall on them. The alien begin to reassemble again. And when Eddie lands on the ground, he wants to know the story of the creature that attacked them on the plane. And at that time, Venom informs them that the one who attacked them was a creature from the creatures of Xenovega, and that these creatures hunted the symbiote, and that in this way they discovered their location on planet Earth, and that there are definitely other creatures that will come after them, and this is because the symbiotes turned against Knoll and imprisoned him, and they inform that Knoll is looking for the key through which he will be able to get out of his prison, and that these creatures will continue to chase them in order to find the key, and that they will be able to determine the location of the key as soon as the symbiote transforms into its true form, and Venom tells him that if one of them dies, the key will die with him. Because Eddie, while walking in the desert, finds a horse, because as soon as he touches it, it turns into a very fast horse. At that time, the general was standing talking to the doctor, and it appears that the general's position is very hostile in his opinion of the symbiote, and she sees that they are his enemies, unlike the doctor who sympathizes with them and sees them as harmless creatures. Because after that, an officer informs the general that there are witnesses who saw a person jumping from above a plane, so the general understands that it is Eddie, so he begins to chase them, and they shoot him with a shot that separates the symbiote from him. And at that moment, the general orders the soldiers to kill Eddie and capture the symbiote. And the chase begins underwater, and Eddie kills an army soldier, and the phenomenology in a frog, and before Eddie falls from the cliff, Venom enters his body and transforms so that Eddie does not die. And at that moment, the alien is able to determine their location, and the army soldiers begin to attack the alien, but he is able to get rid of them with ease. And at that moment, the general informs the doctor of what happened, and that a strange creature attacked his soldiers. So after that, the doctor goes to Ted to ask him about what is happening, and the doctor informs him that the creature he talked about before exists, and that it killed soldiers from the army. And at that moment, Ted turns in front of her and starts talking to her, and tells her that Noel is looking for Venom because he is the only one who has the key, and that if he finds it, then it will be the end because Noel will destroy everyone, including the planet of humans. And when the general asks him how they can stop Noel's symbiotes, they tell him that he will not be able to stop them, and they swallow that if Venom and Eddie are alive, then that means the key is there, and if one of them dies, then that means the key will die with him. And then the general repeats that he will get rid of the key by getting rid of Eddie or the symbiote. But the doctor objects to what the general intends to do because after that, Eddie meets Martin's family by chance on the road that was going to Area 51 by chance, and Martin and his family welcome. Eddie tells them that he was intending to travel to New York City and offers him help, and that they can take him to Vegas because they are on their way to Area 51 before it is closed, because their dream is to see an alien before the facility is closed forever. And while Eddie was in the car, Martin's holiday begins as they sing on the road, and Eddie begins to get along with them so that Martin's son gives Eddie chocolate and tells him that he is afraid of aliens. And Eddie laughs at him and tells him not to be afraid because aliens do not exist. But as soon as Eddie reaches Vegas, the surveillance cameras recognize him, and Martin tries to help Eddie and gives him money and sells him, and he leaves. And after that, Venom talks to Ed, and Eddie needs money so that he can go to New York City, because the $20 that Martin gave him will not be spent. So Venom convinces him to go and gamble with the money he took from Martin, but the casino guard takes Eddie out before he enters because of his appearance, and that his clothes are not suitable for the place. So Venom transforms and hits the guard, and then Eddie steals a suit from a man standing next to the casino. And then he enters the casino with ease, but Venom makes him play a gambling game very quickly. But in the end he loses all the money he has, because then Eddie meets Madame Chen by chance, and Madame Chen knows that they are with Eddie and offers him to come with her to her suite, because at that time an army soldier informs the general that Eddie was found through surveillance cameras, and that he is currently in Vegas. And Madame Chen asks Venom to go out and dance with her, but Eddie is afraid of being chased by the alien when he transforms. But Venom wants to fulfill Madame Chen's desire despite Eddie's refusal, because once the alien transforms, he is able to track his location, and Venom begins to dance with Madame Chen in order to... Suddenly, the alien attacks him, so he turns around Venom Lady to distract the creature, and he doesn't know how to catch him. And at that moment, the alien doesn't see him. The alien leaves the place, but at the same moment, the army forces are cut off from the place and hit Lady with a shot to get the symbiote out of him. And then they stab Lady with electricity and take her in the plane and leave. But the alien keeps chasing them and enters the facility with them. And at the same time, the Martin family has arrived at Area 51, and they enter through the iron fence and go up to a high tower so they can explore the whole place. And when Lady wakes up, he finds Tate calling him and takes advantage of Lady being still alive to transform, and the symbiote talks to him and asks him to protect the key, and that there is an army of symbiotes in the place where they are, and asks him to free them. And at that time, the general informs the doctor that her mission in the lab is over and asks her to go home. And the general, he hits Eddie with fire to kill him. But suddenly Venom appears in the doctor's body, then enters Eddie's body and saves him before he dies. But suddenly the alien appears and Ted tries to help Venom and asks him to escape. But the creature wishes for Venom, and he will ask the doctor to free all the symbiotes, so that the symbiote begins, after it is freed, to enter the bodies of the doctors and soldiers who are fighting the alien, and Eddie tries to seize the opportunity to escape, and finally Martin sees the aliens from the tower he is standing on. Martin's family keeps calling Eddie, and at that moment Eddie asks them to get out of the place they are in because it is dangerous for them, and the general launches a missile at the creature, and with the teeth, it destroys the tower that Martin's family was on. Eddie helps them and moves, but the missile that the general launched did not affect the creature, and the doctor tries to save Martin's family in her car, and at that moment the alien begins to send a signal. The sound and the signal sound of the symbiote coming out of their bodies, and the creature calls the rest of his clan to support him, and then Eddie tries to help Martin's family to escape, and takes a motorcycle and escapes with it, and turns into Venom so that the creature chases him, and Eddie Beast steps the alien trap so that the army forces can blow it up. But their attempt fails because the aliens do not die, but the creature is able to grab Eddie and was about to eat him, but Martin is able to save him at the last moment, but Eddie is injured, and then Venom tells them that he is proud of him, and they tell Venom that the creatures will continue to reach planet Earth and that they will not end. So Eddie repeats that he confronts them, but Venom is expelled to save his life, and they decide to sacrifice himself and die. At that moment, General Hermé detonates an explosive material on them, and the whole place explodes, and Dr. Bane uses her last symbiote to be able to save her friend. And when Eddie wakes up from the coma, he keeps calling Venom, but finds a high-ranking army officer informing him that Venom is finished, and that he can't talk to him again, and thanks the commander for the sacrifices he made in order to save the planet, and swallows that his record is now clean, and he can start his life from the beginning, so that the events of the movie end, and Eddie remembers all his memories with Venom and promises that he will never forget him. And if you like the summaries that we present, subscribe to the channel and activate the bell button, and write us your opinion in the comments, and see you in new summaries. Bye.